Sir William Wallace, one of Scotland's true patriots, was born near Paisley between 1270 and 1274. Son of a landowner, he went on to become a man who would have an entire nation behind him as he took on the might of a tyrant English king, Edward I, who declared himself ruler of Scotland in 1296 and sought to deprive the Scottish people of their freedom. Wallace was appointed Guardian of Scotland somewhere between the end of 1297 and February 1298, after he destroyed the English at Lanark and killed the sheriff. So began a war that would see the English brought to their knees several times until Wallace's capture and execution in 1305. We all know the Mel Gibson's Wallace from the hit movie Braveheart, but there was so much more to this incredible man. Paranormal In History, in partnership with the Society of William Wallace and the expert guidance of CRA Entertainment, bring you the Wallace Trail. We will bring you the history and story to many locations with ties to Sir William that aren't very well known. So come join us as we uncover the forgotten facts of our greatest patriot, and welcome to the Wallace Trail.
We're standing here in the grounds of Cambuskenneth Abbey. The Abbey was founded in 1140 by David I, King of Scots, and it would have been used as a place of private worship for the garrison of Stirling Castle and the royals when they were here. The Abbey itself was completed in the early 1200s, and it has a long and chequered history. King Robert of Bruce used it as a storeroom and an armoury before the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314. It was also used by Bruce to hold two parliaments. The second parliament that he held was to confirm his son David as heir to the Scottish throne. Moving on to a later date in Cambuskenneth's history, James III, King of Scots, was killed after the Battle of Stirling in 1488, just a few miles up the road. He wasn't killed in battle, he was stabbed to death. He was on the run and he was stabbed to death inside a mill in which he had taken shelter. But James III and his wife, Queen Margaret of Denmark, are both interred in the tombs that you see behind me. But the interment that we are most concerned with inside here is that of Sir William Wallace. Legend tells us that Wallace, as a boy, was educated by his uncle, the priest of Dunipace, and both of them would have visited this abbey on quite a few occasions. Now, legend also states that after Wallace's brutal murder down in London, the left upper quarter of his body was brought back up to Stirling and hung on Stirling Bridge as a warning to the people of Scotland of what would happen to anyone who dared to mess with King Edward I. We're told that in the early hours of the morning, the monks of Cambuskenneth came up to Stirling Bridge, removed Wallace's arm and brought it back to Cambuskenneth, where it was buried secretly. We believe that Wallace's arm bone is buried underneath the stone there. And the Society of William Wallace started a wee commemoration here, and it happens every year, and it's called A White Rose for Wallace, where people come, or any time through the year when the place is open, people come and lay a flower down on the stone. The stone itself, looking directly behind it, points directly to the Abbey Craig, where William Wallace and Andrew de Murray stood all those years ago and watched the English army assemble in front of them. We're standing here on top of the Abbey Craig, where William Wallace and Andrew de Murray stood in September 1297, surveying the area. The monument itself, the National Wallace Monument, which stands here, is 220 feet high. It was built with public subscription, and it was started in 1861. And it's said that 80,000 people gathered up here just to watch the foundation stone being laid. The monument itself was completed in 1869, and it houses the world famous Wallace sword, a two-handed lowland claymore, which is said to have been found in Wallace when he was captured at Rob Royston in August 1305. The sword was taken along with Wallace to Dumbarton Castle. The battlefield below, the main part of the battlefield below, is where the present day rugby club now stands. We're standing in the grounds of Stirling Rugby Club, and thousands of drivers pass here every day, not one of them knowing that this is where a major part of the Battle of Stirling Bridge took place on the 11th of September 1297. On the eve of the battle, Sir William Wallace and Andrew de Murray stood at the top of the Abbey Craig, which we visited earlier. They held a council of war, probably along with their lieutenants like Sir John de Graham of Dundaff, and they were able to take in the whole area of the battlefield and plan their tactics for the next day. On the 11th of September, the English army started to move from Stirling Castle towards the old Stirling Bridge. They were commanded by Sir Hugh de Cressingham, the English treasurer, and the Earl of Surrey. They began to cross the bridge, two abreast. The Scots, who were positioned slightly west of the bridge and also on the causeway, were able to lure the English over, and once they had got enough of them over the bridge at some point collapsed, and the Scots were quite easily able to deal with and mop up the remnants of the English army. Round about the boundary of the club there is a massive loop in the river, and the Scots herded the English army into this loop and began killing. The English soldiers who were not killed in the battlefield were drowned in the river, where they fell in with their heavy gambesons on, which would drag them down to the bottom. So this place is where the major part, or the most part, of the Battle of Stirling Bridge took place. Stirling Bridge, Wallace's finest hour, where along with his co-commander Andrew de Murray, he fought and defeated a vastly superior English army. This sent shockwaves around Europe. The English army were supposed to be invincible. How could such a thing happen? The bridge on which we stand just now was not the original bridge. This bridge was built in around the year 1500, and kings and queens of Scots have walked across this bridge. James IV, James V, Mary Queen of Scots, James VI have all walked across this bridge at one time or another. Wallace's bridge, the wooden bridge, was about a couple of hundred yards upstream, and it crossed the river diagonally to strengthen it against the current. The bridge that Wallace, in Wallace's day, was only wide enough to take two men and horses side by side, and this suited Wallace and de Murray's tactics absolutely perfectly. How do we remember Wallace in present day? The tree behind me, the oak tree, was planted in 97 to commemorate the 700th anniversary of the Battle of Stirling Bridge. Over on the right hand side of me, out of shot, there's a permanent saltire flying over this spot, and there's a group of people who are trying to get a 30-foot statue of Wallace and de Murray. We hope to have this achieved within the next few years. It will be called the Guardians of Scotland.
We hope you've enjoyed the first steps of the Wallace Trail. Join us for part 2, where we take you further along the path of Scotland's greatest patriot.